Hey there YouTube, I'm Ikitsu, this is the Ikitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to a little bit of Sins of Solar Empire 2. So we're going to be talking a little bit about a composition that you can use here. This is one that I think works well into Vasari. I'll explain why I don't think these work against other factions, but we're starting off with the Halcyon here. Now, the Halcyon is actually a pretty good ship all around, but I'd say it's best into the Vasari matchup. The reasons for this are, it's got excellent point defense. It's not really good enough to carry you through like a game by itself, but the Halcyon having access to all that point defense does mean that they can like kill off a bunch of missiles that are heading towards them. Against tech, you don't have to worry about missiles until tier 3 tech, so they're going to have to wait till they're all the way up here before they can build their missiles with the Javelin LRMs, which is a little bit too late. For Advent, the mirror matchup of Advent versus Advent, if they go for a whole bunch of Tempests, that's not something you're hugely concerned about as Advent, because you're not going to be building a whole bunch of Acolytes in the early game or anything like that. They're not really an early game unit. So if your opponent has a whole bunch of Tempests, you can just be like, okay, well, I just won't build like that, and you'll be sort of fine. And because the Disciple is so fast, it's actually pretty possible for you to catch up to them with the Disciples, so killing Tempest with Disciples is kind of okay. More importantly, though, like you've got other things that I would say are a better option, because the Tempest kind of just doesn't do very heavy damage. You could also just go Tempest versus Tempest if you really, really wanted to sort of counter out any kiting behavior that your opponent has. If your opponent's gone for like Advent Wrath and your Advent Reborn, you might have to go a bunch of Tempest to prevent him from kiting you, but other than that, you're not worried about missiles. So the end result is the Halcyon is kind of like really good at countering a thing that could come out from Vasari. The other reason is that Vasari have kind of weak point defense. Tech has excellent point defense and are very good at countering bombers, so I would never build the Halcyon into Tech, although some people advocate for that. That's just my personal opinion. And the Halcyon does work pretty well into Advent in terms of like them not having point defense early either. So those are the situations where I would consider getting a Halcyon. The other nice thing about this, of course, is that it's just got very, very high damage values. If you've got the ability to bring your bombers to bear and they don't have the ability to just flak field your bombers, then this is a pretty good choice. So this is going to be something that just is what brings our heavy damage throughout the game. And we're actually just going to be spamming out Halcyons when we get the chance to. That's going to be kind of one of our important units to just have large numbers of. Going to be replacing all of our fighters with bombers. You'll see us doing that in just a moment here where all of our fighters pop. But yeah, being able to sort of deal some damage against armored targets, that's going to come from the Halcyons. They've got the beam weapons that are actually quite good. They've got, of course, a whole bunch of those bomber waves. Those are quite good. But we're sort of going to rely heavily on these as our only way of dealing damage against heavy targets, which is a little bit bad because they're not the best at it. In addition to these guys, we are building Disciples. Disciples are kind of useful into most matchups in the early game. Their damage per second is actually very, very efficient, making them sort of a good choice for that. The only problems with them, of course, is that they're very, very fragile, so they get killed off in very large numbers, but they're also cheap, so you can actually get them in very large numbers. And that's kind of what we're sort of going for here, but the more important thing is that they've got that 150 Pierce medium laser, and there's a ton of Vasari units that have got the sort of like Pierce value where these guys deal excellent damage against them, and you're going to be able to really badly out-cost efficiency a lot of Vasari units. Vasari units are very not cost-efficient into Disciples, up until you get kind of all the way into tier like 3, where you can get the heavier units. These guys are not here to kill capitals. Our strategy here is to destroy all of the supporting ships, because if it's a capital ship versus capital ship fight, Advent win it. The main reason is that if we take a look at our Halcyon and look at what it's capable of doing in terms of its damage and everything like that, like, yeah, sure, there are Vasari ones that can out-damage it to a certain extent, but not with Iconis Guardians, not with shield regeneration, and not with cleanse. If we've got all of those tools together, the Halcyon literally cannot be killed if we have a support fleet and the Vasari player does not have a support fleet. They have to have enough damage to burst us down very, very quickly, and you cannot do that with just capitals. So that's why we want to really focus on keeping trimmed down numbers of counteract assailants, revester skirmishers, and defensors. If we can get rid of all of those support vessels, our capital ships will never worry at all about getting killed by their capital ships. Even if we have one capital ship, they have 3. So at this point in time, we're just going to go ahead and expand a little bit. Let's see you guys once we get our next ship in this composition here. Alright, so quite early on, we started massing Tempests. And the reason that we're getting Tempests into Vasari is, if we're playing against a real human being, we're playing against the impossible AI. What I would want to do is to have like a squad of 5 or 6 of them, just as a separate hotkey, and keep them near our cluster of buildings here. The reason that that's really strong is that if they send in some raiders, like the actual raiding unit, what'll happen is they'll sort of go for this cluster of buildings, and they'll immediately get killed by those Tempests. Like, the Tempests have no problem whatsoever killing, like, 30, 40 of those things if I've got, like, 6 of them. They do tremendous damage against that type of unit. The other thing about this is that you're capable of getting into fights and delaying stuff for quite a while, because they're surprisingly tanky. If our opponent comes in with a real sort of pseudo fleet there, we've got like a couple of these Gauss defense platforms. If I didn't have access to them, I would be building beam defense platforms here. Some beam defense platforms, your lesser factories with the heal ability, and a couple of Tempests is capable of delaying your opponent long enough that you can bring in your main fleet to go and oppose them. But the other thing about these guys is that they do destroy enemy early game PD. Early game, the Vasari rely on the Defensor for point defense. And it's kind of a weird ship. It's a Corvette class ship that's capable of like shooting down a couple missiles, but it doesn't do well into Tempest, because Tempests have got 8 missiles per wave instead of just 4. Meaning that the Tempests are capable of actually overwhelming the full point defense value of something like, say, the Defensor. And they're excellent damage against that ship. The Defensor is another example of a light Corvette-type ship that takes full damage from the Tempest, meaning that these guys kill them really, really fast. If they have a whole bunch of those guys, it's not a huge deal, but it can reduce our damage per second by a very large amount, because it's killing off all of our bombers in the early game. That's not really something that we want to allow happen. So getting a bunch of Tempests is quite nice. The other thing is that they're a surprisingly tanky unit for their cost. If they're taking a bunch of hits for us, that's actually quite good. Them taking shots compared to like other units that we've got taking shots, it's kind of ideal for us. So having a bunch of these guys in our fleet is going to make it so that our fleet's a little bit more durable. It gives our opponent something to shoot at that is a little bit tougher and is annoying. And their damage can be kind of okay. It's similar to a Disciple. We're actually losing some Disciples that I really shouldn't be. I should be microing these better, but I've sent them on an assassination mission to kill like Gardas. Yeah, that combination of Tempests mixed with Disciples puts us into a situation where we can sort of deal with all of their light ships really, really quickly and really efficiently. And we're going to have a very cost-efficient way of just having a large mass of ships that's capable of contesting those smaller ships. Because again, the strategy against Vasari for us is not to destroy their capitals quickly. It's to end up in a situation where we're in a capital versus capital fight, because Advent wins that, like 100%. Even against a real person, if they've like got 3 capitals and like we've got our 1 capital and we're microing Cleanse and he's microing Focus Fire and all of his abilities perfectly, so that he's like just hammering the Halcyon like as perfectly as he can. He can't kill it. Like, he's never going to be able to kill the Halcyon. He's never even going to get it into crippled, like, with just that. He needs to have more damage per second than capitals are capable of producing on their own, up until you've got, like, 6 capitals. Once you've got to that point, you can sort of, like, erode past that. But by that point in time, ideally, we should have some other stuff going on, really. Here we can see that point defense working pretty nicely from the Halcyon here as well, stopping those Javelises from dealing damage to us. We're not dealing that tremendous amount of damage from our Tempests here. Like, they're just not firing at really the right targets, like the Krosov frigates. This is where, again, I don't necessarily think we're as useful against something like, say, the Tech faction, because they have got slightly more durable ships earlier on, but they're not, like, that durable, so...
Harmony research complete.
The other thing is, like, the Garda Flak Frigate has got 4-point defense things, and they're not a Corvette. They've got, like, 100 durability, so Tempests really do not do as well into that type of unit as they do against Vasari or Advent, even. But again, Advent don't build Corvettes either. In any event, though, let's go ahead and wait till we get to the next little bit here. Alright, so here's the last unit that's in this composition, the Iconis Guardian. The Iconis Guardian is going to be, like, combined with Cleanse to make it so that our ships, our capitals, just cannot be killed, basically. It's also quite good for the rest of our fleets there, making it so that these Disciples here, for example, are taking, like, literally twice as long to kill. When they would be normally killed very, very quickly by these Harkas, they're taking, like, twice as long to kill them. Twice of not very much time is still not very much time, but it is definitely better. And with the Tempests, like, them being able to survive twice as long, they've got, like, the equivalent of 3,200 hit points. Even if they're taking 100% damage because their durability is low. Like, that's still a ridiculous amount of durability that they're providing with our fleet there. Like, ridiculous amount of staying power that our fleet's capable of getting.
Unveiled by our scryers.
As you can see, doing virtually no damage to these Harkas. You can see the missiles streaming in and just not doing damage.
Exotics have been unveiled by our scryers.
Normally with the strategy, we would find ourselves in a situation where we can't get Tauronites. We are going to be getting a Tauronite from this Derelict here. And we do have the ability to get some Tauronite from Earth-like planets. As a result, it is okay for us to try and get another Halcyon here, so we are shooting for a second Halcyon. Under normal circumstances, I would be getting Raptures as our secondary capital ships, because they kind of provide some of the stuff that we need here, and they're cheap on exotics that we've got available. So that's something that you can always sort of get as Advent. It's a little bit more difficult to get access to the Tauronite that you need for Halcyons, so that's another reason that we want to start with the Halcyon, is that we've got access to that. But if you don't have that ability to get Tauronite from the map, you're not going to be able to build more Halcyons until quite late. You might want to rush to get access to the exotic refineries so that you can start building your own refineries, but at that point in time, it's much more efficient actually to just build more of your other ships, like more Tempest, more Disciples, and more Iconis Guardians with that money. The only time that's really, really that strong to be doing things to get you access to more capitals is if you're more worried about supply blocking yourself than you are with getting more fleet power, because more small ships, like, they're very supply inefficient. Like, having 10 Tempests is very supply inefficient, but that's much more cost efficient than it is to get a Halcyon. So it really depends on what you're after. If you find exotics from planets, though, in that situation, it's actually kind of efficient to go for the capitals in terms of cost. So always get, like, a capital. The easy rule is if you've got the exotics to get a capital that you want, then spend the exotics to get the capital that you want. If you can't get the capital that you want, it's better to get the ships to improve your fleet size.
Hostility research
Once you're
complete.
reaching your supply cap and you know that you're not going to be able to move to the next supply cap, like, let's say that I've already got the 1,000 supply cap and I need to get the 1,500, and I'm at, like, 800 supply. At that point in time, it might be a good idea for me to just get capitals, because I know I'm not going to get up to Tech 3 for very long in this particular playthrough. What we're trying to do with this build is to rush down an opponent very, very quickly. It has a weaker late game, it has a weaker transition, because we were spending so much on getting this kind of early game strength. And we're going to be trying to beat this at around the, like, 1 hour mark and functionally be done it before that. So this is a kind of a rush strat against in a 1v1 kind of context, but that does mean that we suffer sort of with our later game stuff there. Still not entirely sure what all this purple stuff is here. I think that they're still being covered by Iconis Guardians, which is weird because I don't think that they should be casting that right now. Yeah, they're not. Is that duration still running somehow? I guess it is. Regardless, though, we're going to skip ahead just a little bit here. Actually, I don't even think I do have to, because I believe they're already on their way. We're going to watch our first, like, major fight with the Vasari here, and I think we can just go ahead and hit game speed times 10 for a little bit.
Unveiled by our scryers.
They should be on their way
Mining
soon.
upgrade complete. Hostility research complete.
We are exiles no longer.
Got that second Halcyon that's going to be on the way here.
Civilian structure
Rotating our
complete.
structures here, we got our 3 Gauss platforms and we got a factory. And again, the factory has got access to repair.
Exotics have been
It's not
unveiled
operational
by
right
our
now,
scryers.
but here we go.
Defilers encroach upon us.
So
Our
here our
forces
opponent has
have
come in.
engaged
We've got,
the
like I
enemy.
said, these defensors, which are their point defense ships, but they're getting killed by the Tempests, which is kind of ironic. And we're just running past their lines here with our Disciples. And we want our Disciples to just start focus firing down counteract assailants, because these guys are fairly expensive they're not that expensive, but they're a little bit more expensive than our Disciples. They're quite squishy against Disciples, which are going to be able to like kill them all pretty easily. He's using like his big guns from his capitals and stuff like that to kill Disciples, which is not that unusual actually. That's something that the AI likes to do, and people like to do, because they're closest target, but we're just killing these guys off. Now, if we didn't have these defense turrets, their capitals would not be taking any damage, but I don't care about dealing damage to their capitals. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to pare down these numbers of Canarech assailants. He's killing my Tempest, but the Tempest, like I said, are quite tanky. The fact that these Revestra Skirmishers are very high damage does mean that he's going to tear through them pretty fast. But it's still, like, going to come out in our favor, as you're going to see here. He's trying to kill this Halcyon, but the Halcyon is perfectly capable of surviving all this. Second Halcyon on the way. Some more Guardians. Now that there's no more Defensors, we do switch all of these Tempests to go and attack these guys here. Because again, these guys are sort of a priority. We do still want to kill their point defense so that our Tempest can do damage unimpeded. It makes so that the Bombers can do damage unimpeded. But they still got this huge Revestra Skirmisher blob, which is still a bit of a problem. But their damage rapidly falling off here. This, I make a mistake. I leave this Halcyon fighting this Volcaros Desolator when I should be switching it to attacking the Revestras. But it's kind of fine at the end of the day there. Our capital here has been taking all these missile shots and is basically like still full health. It's like, it doesn't give a damn really. We've had like it getting healed by the Lesser Factory. It's been fine. Another Goss online there. Capable of firing away at this Volcaros Desolator. They've actually been buying self-repairing armor as well, so they've been like putting this off of cooldown to like keep their ship alive like faster. As you can see, even though they've sort of turned and started fighting some other stuff here, our Disciples are still alive and they're still pounding away and killing all of these guys. It might not have looked like it early, but we are winning pretty badly the frigate fight here. The frigate's like just vastly in our favor. They've been focusing down the capital with these Canarech assailants, and that's what they do. Like, they should not really be fighting frigates, because if you're doing that, you're really inefficient. You should be definitely getting Revestra Skirmishers if you want to fight frigates, but the Disciples beat them in efficiency fights as well, so having twice as many Revestras and no Canarech assailants would have still gone in my favor.
The shields are offline.
Shields are offline for this guy. You want to wait till your shields are offline, and then you want to pop, like, a cleanse. So what happens there is our shield burst restorer is still on cooldown, which means that we're still waiting for that to happen. Once that goes down, we're going to be at 100% shields. So if you cleanse after your shields go down, like, you're getting sort of the maximum value out of it, not just because of that, but also because we get a little bit of our armor points back. So we're getting both armor, we're getting armor and our shields back, and then we also get the shield burst on top of that. So I'm just going to wait for like the extra 9 seconds here. And this is why it's literally impossible for them to kill our capital in a capital versus capital fight. If you keep cycling this, our capital is just always going to be like in perfectly fine health. Burst, literally full shields. For our opponent to win, like, they need to have enough stuff that's capable of winning this fight against these sort of more minor units. At this point in time, our opponent is forced to flee. I actually wish that I wasn't dealing damage to their capital here, because if I wasn't dealing damage to their capital, they probably would have stayed and fought, and I could have killed more of these Revestra Skirmishers. But we are in a really strong position compared to our opponent at this point in time, and basically things are going to continue like this. I'm going to show you when they get their next unit, because the next unit that the Vasari are online with, we're still going to use the exact same units and the same composition against that, but I do want to talk a little bit about it.
Hostility research
Alright, so as you
complete.
can see, like, going further into this, we've been building the exact same units. We still got Disciples, we still got, like, our Halcyons, we've been building Tempest, although they're pretty much all dead. At this point in time, our opponent has switched to having Lacerarch Transporters. And again, they run into some interesting problems. The first problem is that the Lacerarch Transporter cannot build fighters, they can only build bombers. Instead, what they have is point defense. So you could think of this as a point defense type of unit, but again, they've only got 2 point defense guns. That makes them quite good against bombers, because the DPS on the PD pulse gun is very, very high. They can kill bombers very, very efficiently. However, they run into the problem that they can't kill missiles, like, at all, making it so that they're very, very bad defense against Tempests. And they're still in that bracket where they're pretty easily killed by a group of disciples that have been sent to sort of go and kill team them. So we've just taken our disciples here, we've sort of sent them off on a kill mission, and they've shredded down these guys very, very quickly. Not as quickly as I'd like, because I think they've gone and decided to attack something else for some damn reason. I think there's a, I'm not sure what they've got to turn around and fight. Regardless, though, this is the last sort of unit that you're going to typically see if you're doing the strategy correctly, and the last one that you actually have to worry about. I believe that this is a tier 3 unit for Vasari, but I'd have to double check that. I believe that's true. It's easier for them to get these, I find, than the Ortova Suppressor, or for some reason or another, the AI likes getting them before the Ortova Suppressor. Now, against a real person, you might have to fight the Oppressor at this point in time. It's a difficult to mass unit, it's quite powerful, and it's very good against most of our composition, but they do get kind of smushed by your Halcyons. So, if they build those instead, you can still keep building more Halcyons and do fine with that sort of thing. Over here we got like a mothership mothering some of these little Tempests here. We're doing mostly fine and just sort of like keeping these guys busy, but I should probably be doing something else over there. I've mostly been focusing on this fight here. And at this point in time, our opponent's been forced to flee yet again, so... again, what we're focusing here is mostly just on getting more mass. I do want another, like, capital, though, so we are going to build another capital, another mothership. But, you know, at this point in time, we've got plenty of bombers for dealing damage to tougher units. We got our opponent on the run, so this Jurassical Navigator we can sort of deal a bunch of damage to. We do not kill it in this instance, but that's fine. And we'll be able to sort of sweep the planetary defenses. Now, the Ortova Suppressor, like, if you're facing it in sort of numbers that you'd expect at this sort of stage, you don't have to worry about them that much. You can kill them pretty easily and pretty quickly with your bombers. Just focus fire them down one by one, and they'll go down pretty quickly. However, if your opponent has rushed to Ortova Suppressors, which the AI will never do, but if your real-life opponent has done that, you may have to go on the defensive for a little while and change your tech. In particular, I would probably aim for getting the exorias. If you've got, like, a fleet of a bunch of capital ships and then back them up with exorias and Iconises, you can defeat, like, the Ortova Suppressors really, really, really easily. If they've gone Ortova Suppressors and they've got them mixed with the Canoric Assailants or something like that, you send, like, the kill teams of Disciples to go kill the Assailants, and then you just have, like, the rest of your stuff focus fire down the Ortova Suppressors. At that point in time, it's a much more even fight, because your opponent has got stuff that can kill all of your frigates really, really easily. You've got stuff that can kill their frigates really easily. You have got stuff that can kill their heavy units really easily, and they've got stuff that can kill your heavy units really easily. So it's going to come down to a little bit of a more fair fight there. The problem is that you're doing it with tech like 2, and then 1 tech 3 that you sort of try to get into. Again, the reason that you're going to defend before you do this, if you're defending, you can build a whole bunch of beam platforms around your planet. And if you're fighting a bunch of Ortova Suppressors and they're near beam cannons, then the Ortova Suppressors just melt against those. They're very, very good at killing those. Your capitals are very good at killing those. So it's not like you're defenseless against them. It's just that they will chew through your Disciples really, really quickly. So they could end up in a bit of a bad spot there. And if they kill too many of their Disciples, if too many of your Disciples are dead, they can send in their Canoric Assailants after that, and there's not a lot you can do to defend against that. So you do ideally want something that can kill the Ortova Suppressors very quickly and efficiently. You could even run away with your Disciples and then have your other ships fight that. Or the other cheap trick that you could do is you could, like, lose all your Disciples, your opponent loses all their Ortova Suppressors to the, like, carriers and stuff like that. They send in their Canoric Assailants thinking that they've eliminated all of your light ships that can sort of hunt them down. At that point, you pop a Resurrection, and suddenly you've got all of your, like, Disciples back, and your Disciples just go in and kick their ass. In that sort of instance, you know, that works out pretty well there. I don't actually think necessarily, though, that if you're in this stage of the game, you're like 45 minutes in, that you switch to that. At this point in time, we are going to go ahead and start getting the Exotic Refinery, and at that point in time, we're just going to start slamming out a bunch of Tauronite. And once we've got a whole bunch of Tauronite, we can get like 5 or 6 more, like, Halcyons if we want to. Spamming Halcyons against Vasari, like, Vasari has a real hard time with that. They don't have any really good
Research
solutions to
complete.
carriers, and the Halcyons are very good damage, even with just their beams against a lot of their heavier ships there. So they counter the Ortovis Oppressors, they counter the Lasor Transporters, they counter a whole bunch of things. The only thing you can really do is go for like capital versus capital. But if I've got a big supporting fleet and I've got a bunch of Halcyons, which are pretty good against capitals, they're not amazing against them, you can end up in a situation where you just get completely walloped by carriers as Vasari. So in any event, though, that's going to be our composition for today. We'll just go quickly over it. The important parts there. It's the Halcyons are your sort of big heavy hitters there against tough targets. Gonna get Tempest. They're gonna be both tanky and our anti-corvette unit, making it so that they can't spam sulfuric defensors against the bombers that we have. We're going to get a whole bunch of disciples. They're going to form a kill team that's going to rapidly strike against our opponent's most important units, the big damage dealers. And we're going to get a bunch of Iconis Guardians. Other important things here, we're going to want to have Cleanse. We're going to want that at tier 3, and we're going to basically be popping that on our Iconis Guardians to keep our capitals in the fight, keep our other stuff in the fight if they really have to. That's going to be the composition there. We're going to want to fight pretty early on. We don't want our opponent getting anything crazy like a Titan or anything like that, or we don't want them getting access to a lot of late tier 3 items in a big ball. So that's our strategy for today. Hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.